Playback of the event is going to be available at the end of the day on our website. So if you want to share it with a friend or watch it again, you certainly can. And if you're enjoying the content we put out, make sure you sign up for our daily newsletter. We put out stories every day and we let you know about the events that are coming. And if you have any future event topics, speaker, or company recommendations, please contact our director of events, Annie Burford, and Annie's going to pop her email in the chat at the bottom. Okay, so enough of the boring stuff. Let's jump in. I think it's so easy to see so many successful entrepreneurs in the news, in the LA community, and say, wow, okay, they have it made. I'm sure they didn't experience any challenges, or perhaps you have an idea and you don't know where to start or know when it's really the right time to take that leap of faith. Reality is, even the most successful of entrepreneurs started at the beginning, even though it doesn't look like it from the outside looking in. So that's the point of this series. We're going to interview 2 fierce female founders today for 15 to 20 minutes each, and we're going to go rapid fire through their journeys. So first up is Melanie Strickland, the CSO and co-founder of Slingshot Aerospace. Slingshot Aerospace is a situational intelligence company that applies advanced analytics and computer vision to Earth and space data, empowering customers with clarity in complex environments. So hopefully I didn't screw that up. Melanie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Thanks.
So before we jump into Slingshot, you have an incredibly fascinating background. So you've spent 21 years in the United States Air Force, and then you went on to co-found your company. So I'd love for you to walk me through a little bit of what type of practical and leadership experiences during your time there prepared you for the next challenge of founding a company?
Sure. So I was very fortunate during my 21 years in the Air Force, to be able to really get after the nexus of my 2 loves, both air and space. So I flew on a surveillance aircraft for the first 8 years of my career in the Air Force. And then I moved over to the space side, where I developed some of the missions that are on orbit today, operated those, and then came out here to Los Angeles to develop the future systems that are either on orbit now or will be soon. And so I just put that out there because there's not too many times in life that you get the opportunity to do what you love and to cultivate your leadership prowess and those types of things. And so what the Air Force or the military gives us as we go through that journey is the ability to make really complex decisions in short order. It instills us with the toolbox that allows us to really make prioritization key during that decision matrix, right? And all of that happens under pressure, under mission criticality, and people's lives are at stake. And so bringing that into the corporate world is not as challenging as you might think. It really is a natural fit to go from that type of environment into a startup where maybe lives aren't at stake, or maybe they are. But it really gives an opportunity for some of us to come out and show the world some of the skills that we've gained through that journey.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comparison, because I think so many times when you're in a startup, right, it feels like it's, oh my gosh, I have to make the right decision. And you can see a lot of founders caught between a rock and a hard place. But to your point, you've actually made decisions where lives are on the line. So you're prepared to make those decisions very quickly.
Right.
So I'd love, for you to talk a little bit about Slingshot Aerospace, right? I think that this is
Sure.
really fascinating what your company is in. Like, where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so it was during that journey within the Air Force that, there's such an abundance of overhead data, whether that's from imagery or signals. The amount of information that can be gained from above is really just astounding. But all that information or all that data isn't readily available at the right time in the right place. A lot of times it's got to go through some really rigorous analysis in order to extract the information that you need during those critical times to make those decisions. And so it became very evident to me over the culmination of my career, that we needed to really get after a better way of doing real-time extraction of that information. And with the confluence of, high power compute, artificial intelligence, and other technologies coming to be, it was just a perfect opportunity. And I had worked with, some of my mentors across the Air Force and the community that I had been part of for a long time. And it became imperative that we start this company. We had the right knowledge and had been around the technology that was once only afforded to nation states or governments, and have a really neat opportunity to democratize that type of capability and to enhance it, and not only bring it back to the warfighters at the tactical edge or at the enterprise, but also start to democratize it to make the world a better place.
Mm. And so, I think you eloquently described how this relates to your background and how it naturally evolved. Was there a moment though, where you said, okay, I have to do this full time? Or was it more of an evolution that, okay, over time now I'm seeing more and more, the reasons to start my company full time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on a deployment, and I'll put that in air quotes for those of you that are just listening, where I was flying back and forth from Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is a coastal base here that we launch rockets from, and a lot of our space operations are handled out of with the Air Force. And I was flying back and forth between there and the Middle East, helping our forward deployed arenas with space-enabled capabilities. And that's when I met one of my co-founders, Tommy Ashman, who was working on a side project that may seem from the topical perspective that it doesn't relate, but he was working with the vineyards up in the Central Coast to really help them understand the efficacy of their plants to use water using drones. And he asked if I would help with those types of experiments on the weekends, and I just thought it was fascinating. And we really, we resonated across the area of, we've got way too much data coming out of the sky in our other job, and started talking about that. And I think it was at that point that we really decided, hey, we've got to do something about this. Let's leverage these summer experiments where we were hiring interns and helping the viticulturalists on the Central Coast so that we can all drink better wine with the idea that we could take a much larger data set and really get after that impact. And so we brought in my other co-founder, David Godwin, who actually is my brother-in-law, but we didn't have the business experience or the prowess there, and he did. He's a serial entrepreneur and big data stack engineer, and he was helping us, through that summer. And then towards the end of the summer, I still remember sitting around a farmhouse table there on one of the vineyards and looking out and just talking about the things that we want to do in the future. And he said, that is really inspiring to me, and I'm looking to really come out and start my next gig. And I would love to join you guys if we form this company together, Slingshot Aerospace. I'd love to be, that third co-founder. And matter of fact, he's our CEO today. Because of that business prowess. We have a very diverse team, but it was then, you ask, when was that aha moment? I was still in the Air Force. I put in my paperwork that next week to retire, and we officially started our company July 1st. The day I retired, 15 days later, we're sitting in Techstars, Los Angeles, going through that mentor-based accelerator that really helped us out. But it was that aha moment sitting on the Central Coast, really the culmination of flying drones over a field and our Air Force backgrounds and a big tech guy coming together to form that.
That's so cool. I think it's always interesting to talk to founders, because some you hear that there is an aha moment. And for others, it's that a side hustle eventually becomes valuable enough to really just put the time in full time. But that is very cool that you can even just think back to sitting out there having that conversation. It's a really great moment to reflect on. Mm-hmm. It also sounds like you guys have a really cool founder fit. going on, which I appreciate, that everyone's bringing something different to the table in terms of expertise, which I imagine was really helpful when you were raising funding to have those voices in the room. So to that point, I'm curious about how that process went, raising funding, right? Like you mentioned you didn't have the business background, you brought someone else in. Were investors concerned that you yourself didn't have that traditional business background? And also, how did you explain this idea to them? Because it's very technical.
It is. So for the first question, were they concerned? And at early stage companies, seed investors are really looking at the team dynamic more than they are the technology. And so that was in our court. And the value of the difference that we brought was distinct and tangible, right, for them to see. The knowledge and the leadership and the technical prowess from our Air Force days combined with the technical prowess and the business acumen that David brought. It was just tangible. It was in the room. We all, were instilled with those leadership skills as well, whether it was from the commercial world or the Air Force. And so that was definitely in our court, like I said. The challenge in fundraising was truly, how do we take these really complex ideas of extracting data from an enormous amount of disparate technologies orbiting this earth and make it understandable and really get after what we wanted to do. And neatly enough, or unfortunate and fortunate enough, during our initial fundraise, we're in the middle of Techstars when Hurricane Harvey hit. And we were able to very, very quickly leverage our small tech stack at the time to get after understanding the flood and its impact on individuals and really help the emergency response teams to save lives during that critical time frame. And so that helped us explain our technology. And the more we created more, we were able to really make it more thought-provoking and tangible for those investors, and got fortunate enough to actually pick our investors. And we picked those that would be willing to roll up their sleeves at night in case we had an issue or something like that. And that was our criteria. Would you be willing and capable of coming in at 1 o'clock in the morning if Slingshot were to have an issue? And those are the investors that have come in multiple rounds with us to this day.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, it does sound like you guys all are bringing really interesting things to the table with your backgrounds. So I imagine that was incredibly attractive to investors. You mentioned this Hurricane Harvey use case that you were able to utilize to more tangibly explain what Slingshot Aerospace could do. And I was looking at some of the different projects you've worked on. It really astounds me the number of use cases where it makes sense for your company to play. Most recently, your partnership with 211 LA County to create the online mapping tool during COVID. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So COVID-19 took us all by surprise. Obviously, it's uncharted territory for us all, and we wanted to do our part. Some of the things that we learned in Techstars and we still embody today is #GiveFirst. And so when the crisis that we were exploring how we could leverage our technology to help the Los Angeles community and communities that we're a part of. Meanwhile, 211 LA County, for those of you that don't know, they really try to help our underserved population. They were being flooded with calls from people looking for support related to their food needs. And we met 211 LA County and realized that we could actually customize our pretty sophisticated online mapping tool to display in real time where food sources were popping up and where those existing food sources and banks were available throughout the community. And so in just under a few weeks, we were able to customize our mapping tool and allow people to quickly find more than 20,000 free and available food resources across our community.
Wow, that's so impressive, and such a tangible number to wrap your mind around. That's just one example, though. I'm curious, stepping more broadly, what kind of impact do you want to create with Slingshot Aerospace as a whole? Let's say 5-10 years down the line.
Yeah, like I said, we want to impact the world, and that's pretty broad. I can say, that the capabilities that we've harnessed so far are really helping the government and insurance companies and first responders really understand and enhance their situational awareness. And situational awareness is a human condition, right? It is how we understand the world that we're in, the complex environment that we find ourselves in, and how do we predict what's coming next. And so for Slingshot, impacting the world is really improving that human condition around situational awareness. How do we perceive our situation? How do we comprehend it better, faster, and with more clarity? And then how can we predict and mitigate the things that are coming next?
Yeah. That's a fantastic soundbite, improving the human condition. um, you've mentioned Techstars LA a couple of times during our conversation, and I actually recently spoke with Anna Barber. What an awesome, fierce woman she is. Um, how have programs like that shaped your experience as a founder, and how has the LA tech and startup community as a whole affected you? And we're .LA, so I have to ask it.
Yeah, so I'll say likewise, I just think the world of Anna. She's a personal mentor and coach, and love her to death. What she's done for our company is bar none. Um, and Techstars, you ask, how has that impacted the company? And I say a lot of times, I tell people it accelerated the company at least 2 years.
Wow.
The interesting thing about Techstars is it's mentor based. A lot of other world-class accelerators are financial based or technology based. They're accelerating different facets of your company or your team through that. But Techstars is the only one that I know of that's mentor based, and they have a world-class group of mentors from a global perspective. Any technology genre is available at a phone call away. Within 24 hours, I can have any question you could imagine answered from people that truly want to give first and give back to the community. It's really interesting. I now have the opportunity to be a mentor within the Techstars ecosystem. And I'm learning even more from being a mentor on how to guide and instill, cultural evolution within our own company. And so it's a very creative energy that's produced within the Techstars ecosystem. We were within the first class out here in Los Angeles that they started in 2017. And it was really aimed towards film and media and other, avenues, not aerospace and definitely not, space related data. And so we had to really put we had to open our aperture, so to speak, and really think, how can we leverage these mentors that are coming in, whether from Fox or influencer companies, et cetera. How can we learn from them? And I tell you what, we did. I'm almost more thankful for that than a technology specific focus cohort, because we really had to think hard and long about the questions that we wanted to learn, and bringing that level of diversity into your accelerator really proved to have tangible benefits for us.
Yeah. Well, and now I can imagine, just by the sheer fact that you went through the program, now you're a mentor for other companies. You're expanding that realm of industry of folks that it's pulling in. So it's kind of a cool impact that you've probably had on the program as well for other startups that are coming up. So we are almost at time here, which I know is hard to believe. Any final thoughts that you want to share with our viewers that we didn't get to, that you feel like is important to mention?
Sure. I think a couple of things that I think anyone out there that's starting a company can harness from some of our lessons learned are your co-founder relationships are just as important as your team dynamic and your team relationships. And every company goes through ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And it's the repair of those hard times that really make the difference. And so making sure that you respect and trust your founding team and those that you bring into your team, it is very, very important for the success of your company and to change the people's lives that you're trying to impact.
Yeah, I think that that's a really poignant point to end on. And I think something else that I took away from this is make sure you can easily explain a very technical type of technology to your investors. And your mentor could be someone from any industry, but there's always value and things to be learned. So Melanie, thank you so much for your time today. Really cool learning about Slingshot Aerospace, and I'm excited to see where you guys go.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly.
Okay, so now we are going to move industries here drastically. And we've got Taylor Neiman of Toucan. So Toucan is a platform that helps people learn new things, such as languages, as they go about their day browsing on the web. And don't we spend so much time doing that? So Taylor, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course, thanks for having me, Kelly.
So I was gonna ask for you to tell me about Toucan, but I was thinking maybe let's just see Toucan.
Do it.
Okay, cool. So why don't you share screen and we'll do a little demo and then we can go from there.
Okay, I'll pull it up right now. Bring it up, sharing screen. There we go. Hopefully sharing that with the audience now. Can you see that?
I can.
Okay, awesome. So this is jointoucan.com. If you go to our site, you can actually see it working in motion. So it's a browser extension. You install it into your browser, and then as you're on New York Times, binge watching Netflix, going down Wikipedia rabbit holes, we serve you up with micro moments of learning. And you can see right here that maybe the word coffee will be translated in line through cafe. And through context, you can kind of figure it out. But if you don't understand, you just hover over it, see back to your native tongue. And we have 5 different languages right now, but extending to 3 or 4 in the near future, which is pretty exciting.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Cool. So that was a really cool little demo. That is so true, right? We are all at home going on these binges down into Wikipedia rabbit holes, as you say. I'm curious, where did the idea for Toucan come from?
Yeah. So we're always, us 3 founders, we're always trying to find new ways to learn new things. Like 2 of us were at Headspace really early where we wanted to learn how to meditate, which is also another skill, right? But we're so busy with so many different things and just didn't have the time to take out to open an app for 10 minutes or maybe watch videos or take an in-person classroom that we started thinking, okay, what if we actually instead intentionally layered on top of existing behaviors to be where people already are? We could learn about Spanish while doing my everyday work that I was going to be doing anyways for 8 hours plus a day. And so when we had the idea, we pushed out the first version. It was just 10 words, English to Spanish. See, is this even something interesting? And the moment we had strangers download it at a cafe, could see the magic in their eyes. We're like, okay, this is the one. We have to jump and go after this full time.
So cool. Yeah. I mean, that's gets at this crux that I think we're all dealing with, where there's so much to do. There's so many avenues for us to spend our time, whether it's content or browsing the web or whatever, that layering something that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, which I guess is apt given that it's Toucan. So that's a really interesting idea. I was perusing your LinkedIn, stalking, I suppose, as you would say, ahead of this, and I was struck that a lot of your previous experiences were focused on business development and the strategic partnership space. So what was it about that, that experience in your journey that made you want to start your own company and work on it full time?
Yeah, so every time I joined one of these amazing tech companies in Los Angeles, I really joined with the intention to soak up all the learnings possible. And biz dev partnerships tends to be really a scrappy generalist. How do we scale these companies without paid acquisition, which is a very valuable skill set to have, especially as a future founder. And also joining early enough to see what the founders are doing, what the early employees are doing, and really touch all parts of the business. And so I was able to join, learn everything possible, and then almost in between each of my stints, I jumped to try out a different idea. So Toucan's the fourth concept I've launched, but it's the first one that's venture backed. And to date, we've raised close to $3 million.
Wow. That's so impressive. And that's such an interesting way to think about business development, because you're right. Like I've had some of those roles in my past, and it is so scrappy. It's always trying to spin something up. So that's an interesting perspective, something that I think a lot of times people feel is more of a traditional job title, right? It actually does prepare you really well for what you're doing now.
And Kelly, you mentioned too that you were stalking. I always say I'm a professional stalker, but in the most friendly way. And those biz dev skills transfers over to fundraising, right? Like how do you get in front of the investor that would be the best fit for you? Similar for how would you get in front of the main contact at a person if you're trying to get Google to have Headspace integrate into their entire employee workforce?
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into another part of the conversation I want to get into, which is the execution, right? So you have the idea, but there's so many different execution risks: getting funding, actually finding that MVP that lights up your consumers' eyes. So especially as a female founder, what are the challenges that stood out most to you as you were spinning Toucan up?
Yep. First thing was getting the founding team on board, right? So throughout my years building my career, I always tried to become friends with the smartest engineers, smartest product people that I could over time. And so my two founders are individuals that I've worked with before and that are insanely talented and way smarter than me. So tapping the best people to come on board first was the key unlock, because that's how we attracted our first investment, our first check from Wonder Ventures, who focuses solely on first teams, best teams in Los Angeles. So we got our first check that way, just from having such an amazing founding team, which then provided signal for other investors to flock to us. And I think the other interesting thing that I did during my career to de-risk Toucan is I taught myself how to code with YouTube videos, because I wanted to be dangerous enough to build any idea that I had to then show amazing engineers like Sean, my now co-founder, and get them excited about joining and coming along for the ride.
I really love that you brought up that point, because I have a lot of friends from business school and such that were thinking about starting companies, but don't necessarily have that background to kind of be in the room with engineers and to be able to speak that language, and to prove that they are providing more value than just the MBA side of things. Not to say that doesn't provide value, but they're able to speak that same language and get in there. So very cool that you taught yourself how to code.
Thank you.
I'm very impressed. I'm curious, the pandemic, right, is impacting businesses in so many different ways. How has it impacted folks using Toucan? Because I think it has increased, or the pandemic has increased the amount of time that we're at home, right? Some have chosen to learn a new skill. Some have chosen to binge watch, Succession on HBO, both noble pursuits, let's be real. But I'm curious how you're seeing this dynamic affect Toucan.
Yeah, so since we're seeing increased screen time and people really stuck indoors, people are willing to try new consumer products. So it's almost the perfect opportunity to launch new consumer ideas, because you have their attention and they have time to try new things. Then with everyone stuck indoors, increased screen time is off the charts, right? Because they're doing all different things. Work becomes life. You go from your bedroom to your office and back and forth. And also weekends. We're seeing a crazy amount of usage on weekends that we didn't see before the pandemic. But what's beneficial for Toucan is even if you want to go for a walk, you're probably going to end up working. And so while you're working, we can help you learn. So it hasn't necessarily changed too many things because we've already had the captured attention. But I think the interesting piece is the weekend side, that now we're seeing this higher activity.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because we're not able to go on trips or to Cinespia. Like we're just kind of at home, stuck with our mobile devices and our computers. So before this, well, maybe actually the Zoom did capture our conversation before. We're not sure what we went like, but we were talking about the fact that you're expanding into other languages, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the challenges there. I think it was Japanese that you were mentioning, since it's not the alphabet that we know and love.
Yeah. So language is so complex. Even just English to Spanish, individual words mean so many things. For instance, duck could be an animal or to duck, right? So can our technology figure out what is the best translation? And then beyond Romance-based languages or Latin-based languages like Spanish, like Japanese, that might have a bunch of different characters, or Arabic that reads right to left. How can Toucan still help you learn those languages? And so those are really interesting challenges that we know we can solve, but we're in the midst of like whiteboarding, figuring out what that actually looks like to bring to life within the product.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see the next iteration when those come out, because those are certainly languages I'd be interested in learning. But when I pick something up, I'm like, this is, it's all Greek to me, right?
Yeah.
So we have a question from the audience here. So how is Toucan marketing their services to reach people, or your services rather, to reach people, and where are you advertising your product?
Yeah, so we've been heads down building the last few months or so. We're really starting to poke our heads up now, shout Toucan from the rooftops. To date, all of our growth has been word of mouth. Like people telling other people, because it's so different, new, and it's just cool. So you want to be the first person to know it and show it to your really good friend or to your family members. And then the second piece of it is us three founding team members, our strength is distribution. So we're not going to be going after paid acquisition, where that might be investor money going over to Facebook ads or Instagram ads. Instead, we're thinking, where are these students of learning languages? Where do they exist across the internet or in physical spaces? And how do we get to them? And what are those channels? And then how do we iterate to find what's successful and then scale it out? We're seeing a lot of heat right now on Twitter. It's probably our biggest funnel to date of users. And it's because people like to talk about that they're learning a language. And so we can easily inject Toucan into that conversation.
Oh, that's really interesting, and drawing on your background. You don't necessarily need to be going after paid advertising because you have more of the know-how to do it from previous experiences. So this is a really interesting way to approach online learning. I think it makes sense what you're doing with languages, but how are you aiming to create now more broadly a disruption in how consumers learn new skills?
Yes. So what's exciting about the tech that we're building with Toucan is we can really build an iconic company that teaches you anything you want to learn across a lot of different content verticals. So we're super narrow focused to start, but eventually this could extend into science, into coding, math, history, general trivia, and then even platform-based. We want to dominate web and your browsing activity, but what does Toucan look like layered on top of your mobile activity? Or in a world where everyone's wearing AirPods walking around, what is audio? Or voice with all of these Google Homes or Alexas in our houses? But even in a world where maybe Snap Spectacles or Google Glass or something else in the future comes out, where you're wearing these smart lenses and you're just walking about, maybe you see a sign or you're reading a menu, and that's triggering micro moments of learning. Like, I think all of those combined, really interesting, and we're already starting to build the tech to lay that foundation and groundwork.
Yeah, what I appreciate about the product is that it takes sort of all of the things that sometimes we feel guilty, right, about doing. That we're, oh, I could be using this time to better myself. And you're able to mesh those two worlds so that I can still have the enjoyment, but not feel as guilty that I went down that Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Right? It's a
Learned,
part of
some Spanish while I did it. So it's very cool.
Thank you.
So we're running up on time here. I want to ask you the same question that I finished off with Melanie is there anything that we didn't get to that you want to leave viewers with?
Just, I would love if anyone has time to give Toucan a try at jointoucan.com, and then reach out to me at any time if you have any feedback. My email is Taylor, Taylor, at jointoucan.com. Or even if you just want to say hi.
I know. I feel like you and I need to go hiking. I want to meet your golden retriever.
That would be amazing, Kelly.
So listen, Melanie, Taylor, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed learning about Slingshot Aerospace and Toucan, two very different companies, but definitely changing, how we utilize data and how we learn new skills. So thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.